Hello, everyone, and welcome to MOS Live. My name is Sarah. My pronouns are she and her, and I will be your moderator for today's live animal show. If you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, thank you so much for being there, but unfortunately, we can't see your questions or comments from those platforms. If you are on Zoom with us, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask your questions. If you would like a shout out, please leave your name and age. If you'd like to see closed captions today, you can press the CC button at the bottom of your screen on Zoom and select Show Captions. So now I would like to invite my first museum educator and animal friend to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Corey. I'm the invertebrate keeper here at the museum, and also doing the presentation today is Liz, who is our assistant curator of our live animal center. So today's show is on animal imposters, and you might be thinking, oh, this is going to be a show about animals that are mimicking other animals or look like other animals, so that way they can use it as a defense or to protect themselves in some way. But we are actually going to look at animals that we as humans get confused about, but those animals are not trying to look like other animals. And after we introduce each animal, we are actually going to have you guys guess what you think this animal is. And we're going to see what you guys have to say, because we have some pretty confusing animals. So I'm going to introduce our first animal. This is a Tanzanian tailless whip scorpion. These are also called whip spiders. There's about 155 species that live across the entire world. So just looking at this animal, do you guys have guesses on what you think it is? Do you think it is a walking stick? Do you think it is a mantis? Do you think it's a spider? Maybe a scorpion? Do you think it's a snake? What do you think it is? So we'll see if anyone has some guesses. So this particular one, as the name suggests, is from Tanzania, and that is in Africa. So this species lives in Kenya and Africa, so kind of that Central Africa. Africa is such a big place and has so many different ecosystems that when you say an animal's from Africa, that could mean anything. It's so huge. So these guys are mainly Central Africa. We also have a species of this animal that lives here in the United States. So there's a species that lives in Florida, if you can believe it or not. So it looks like we may have a couple of guesses. Sarah, is anyone saying anything cool?
Yes, we have a couple of guesses for mantis. We have arachnid, we have snake, frog, a lot of people saying scorpion.
Great, fantastic guesses. So anyone who guessed a spider or a scorpion, you are the closest. So these guys are a type of arachnid, but they are not the same as a spider or a scorpion. They are actually their own independent group. So they are related in a sense, but more like distant cousins. So these guys, what makes them a little bit different and really unique from a scorpion or a spider is that their first pair of legs are actually highly segmented, and they use them like antenna. So those legs are no longer for walking, but they kind of move them around so they can feel the world around them. A lot of people think that their front legs are those big pinchers on the front. This one's a male, and he has those really big pinchers. Those are actually called pedipalps, crazy big word, and that's actually a mouth part. That is a modified mouth part. Those are not legs. So they're called pedipalps. So that's kind of what makes these guys different from a scorpion or from a spider, is they have those highly segmented legs. And if you're looking and making really great observations right now, you can actually see him moving them. And he's using those to kind of feel what's going on. So what also makes these guys a little different is that they are not venomous. These look like a really scary animal, but they cannot hurt people. The worst thing that they could do is give you a little pinch with their pedipalp. But these guys, they're not venomous, and their mouth is actually so small, they really can't bite you. And you guys are getting some awesome action here watching them move around. These guys are nocturnal. So right now is actually the middle of his nighttime. So it's cool that we're able to see him kind of moving around. What also makes these guys a little more unique than other arachnids is they live in groups. So these guys will actually live in groups. So if you are in Africa or Florida or wherever you're seeing the species, you could pick up a log or turn around a tree and you'll actually see a couple of them together, which is really, really cool. So I'm going to turn it over and see if anyone has any questions about these awesome animals.
Yeah, so you touched briefly on this, but Watson, age 11, wants to know, can they shoot out venom?
Great question. They cannot. So these guys are carnivores, but they're kind of a sit and wait carnivore. They're more like an ambush predator. They wait for small insects or invertebrates to kind of come by them, and then they make their move to eat their prey. But these guys, the only reason Liz is not actually handling this animal in her hand is because they are so fast that it's sometimes very challenging to hold them because they move super quick and they move more like a crab than they do moving forward. So you're kind of getting some good views here, but when he decides to take off, man, it is quick, quick, quick.
Rosalex would like to know, why doesn't it have a scorpion tail?
Great question. So these guys don't have a scorpion tail because even though their name says they're a whip scorpion, they're not scorpions. So these guys, we kind of, as people, we think they look like a spider or a scorpion, but since they're not related, we just named them their common name, tailless whip scorpion. But that's why they don't have a tail. They just didn't evolve to have one. They don't have a need for it.
Julie, age 10, would like to know, how long can they live?
Such a fantastic question. So no one is really exactly sure, especially about how long they live in the wild. So best guess are that they live anywhere from 5 to 15 years, although some people have reported that they have ones living over 20 years. So these again are a long-lived arachnid. A lot of scorpions and tarantulas, they actually, and with our tailless whip scorpions, and even there's other ones called daemons or vinegaroons that are in this same group. They're very long-lived, and that's just not something we normally think about when we think about spiders or arachnids in general.
Miss Reddy's Rock Stars wants to know, how big can they get?
Great question. So I believe that this male is full grown. So he is about the size, his body is about the size of like 3/4. So if you put 3/4 next to each other, that's about the length, I would say. And then the width would be about 1/4.5. So in total, his body is probably that big around, but with his legs, he's that big. So he's pretty cool. I also noticed no one has made this connection yet, and this is my favorite connection about these animals. If you think, hey, that animal looks kind of familiar, it seems like something that would be in a movie, you would be correct. So tailless whip scorpions are so wild and alien looking that in Harry Potter, in the movies, they actually use this exact animal when they're doing the spells they're not allowed to do. So when they're in that defense against the dark arts class and he's showing them the spells that are they're not allowed to do, they actually use this animal and they don't change anything about it because it is so wild looking that it fit right into the Harry Potter universe.
All right, and for our last question on this animal, Ivory, age 9, wants to know, what do they eat?
Great question. So in the wild, they would eat smaller insects. They don't really eat already dead animals, but if there was something nearby and they were desperate, they might eat a small rodent if it was already dead. But really, they're going to be looking for cockroaches, any type of insects that are going to be in their area. Here at the museum, she gets, or he gets, we have two, we have a male and a female. He gets crickets and then also cockroaches every now and then. So that's a fun little enrichment that he has to really focus those hunting skills to catch.
Awesome. All right. Well, I am going to share my screen with more information while we get our next animal ready today. So hopefully this answers some of the questions that you all had. So location, more about the food, lifespan, and the cool fact, which I know some people had more questions about those legs and antenna. So feel free to take a picture of this, screenshot it, whatever you would like to get this information down.
All right, I think we are pretty close to ready with our second animal. This one is going to be a reptile. And just like Corey did, I want you guys to make a really quick observation and write in some quick guesses as to what you think this animal is. So it is a reptile. We're going to turn on our camera and we are going to see what you guys think. So everyone just type in as soon as you think of it, what you think this animal is. Now, one kind of quick fact about this animal, it actually is featured in one of the most famous scenes in Raiders of the Lost Ark. If you guys are Indiana Jones fans, these animals turn up quite a bit in a very famous scene. So it looks like I already have some responses in, Sarah. So what are the big things people have said that they think this animal is?
Oh yeah, so pretty much everyone is guessing snake. We do have a guess for eel, and we do have a guess for lizard as well.
Wow, those are all really good guesses and guesses that I hear often when we take this animal out. So you guys probably thought I had a trick up my sleeve since we did call our show Animal Imposters. So this animal, while it might look like a snake, is not a snake. This is a lizard. So whoever said lizard, really good job. So it is a completely legless lizard. Corey's not hiding the legs. It does not have any legs. So if I just tell you guys this animal is a lizard and not a snake, would you just believe me? You really shouldn't. You should be thinking like scientists and you should ask for some evidence. Ask for some reasons. Why is this animal a lizard and not a snake? I'm going to point out several features on this animal. Hopefully we can get a nice close look and you'll be able to see some of them as I describe them. But there are several differences. One thing you will notice, if you are patient and you look at the lizard long enough and maybe it stays still long enough, you will notice the lizard wink or blink its eye at you. It just did it. I just caught it. I don't know if you guys did. Now, lizards tend to have movable eyelids, so they can literally close and blink their eyes just like we can. You will never see a snake do this. Snakes have a clear scale that covers and protects their eye, but they don't have an actual movable lid. So maybe you could win a staring contest with our glass lizard, but you will never win a staring contest with a snake. Another thing, this one might be a little harder to point out. These lizards have holes on the sides of their head, little tiny holes, kind of if you look behind the eyes, if you hold still for a second. So they do have external ear openings. Most lizards have these holes on the sides of their head. Snakes never do. So you will never see a hole in the side of a snake's head. They do have ear bones within their skull, but their way of hearing is more to just feel vibrations through the ground. So you won't see an actual opening in their ear. Now, another thing I can point out, this one, Corey can definitely show you. This lizard has a short body and a long tail. So right where that kind of indentation she's showing you, that's where the tail of this lizard begins. Snakes, even though they look like just a really long tail, are actually the opposite. They're a really long body and a relatively short tail. Now, some of you may have heard that many lizards can drop or break off their tail as a defense. If you haven't heard that, it might seem kind of weird for a part of an animal's body to break off, For a lot of lizards, if they have a really long tail, a predator happens to grab onto it if it's trying to get the lizard. If the tail can break off, the predator is left with just a tail, and the lizard has a chance to then get away. Pretty neat defense that many lizards have. Typically, lizards with this defense can regenerate or regrow that tail. Might not be quite the same as the original tail, might not even be the same exact color, but it's still a pretty neat defense that a lot of lizards have. You guys probably guessed where I'm going with this. European glass lizards have that defense. So remember how long that tail was? This tail could completely break off if something really were to grab onto this lizard. That's actually how they got that name, glass lizard. Legend was if you drop a glass lizard, it will shatter like glass. That's not entirely true, but since that tail is made to be broken off, the name kind of stuck. And I think it's a pretty cool name for this lizard. Now, I said at the very beginning that these animals are featured in a very famous scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, so the first Indiana Jones movie. Now, this is the big classic snake pit scene. Indiana Jones is so afraid of snakes. If you take another viewing of this movie, look, you will notice that most of those snakes in the scene are actually glass lizards. I am not sure why they used glass lizards instead of snakes, but once you've seen this animal, you will never be able to not notice that again. So then you can teach other people when they're watching with you that those are actually legless lizards in that scene and not snakes. Now I see I have some questions, Sarah, so why don't I turn it over to some of those?
Yes, absolutely. So our first question comes from Anya, age 10, and William, age 9. How does it move if it doesn't have legs, or does it move like a lizard or like a snake?
Yeah, it has sort of a slithering movement similar to snakes. The scales are a little bit different, so the movement is a little bit different from snakes. These lizards tend to do best moving on textured settings. So rocky hillsides is their main habitat where you find them. If Corey were to put this lizard down just on a flat, smooth tabletop, he wouldn't really be able to get traction very well. So it is kind of unusual. Their movement is kind of similar. If you've ever seen lizards, some lizards, a lot of kinds of skinks, have really short legs. So sometimes those legs are not that helpful, and they do kind of have to wiggle their body more. So that's more how they move, since again, their scales are a little bit different from snake scales. But I know it is pretty cool to watch him move, isn't it?
Yes. All right. Let's see. We have some questions about how they are toward humans. So Watson, age 11, wants to know, are they aggressive to humans? And Miss Freddy's Rockstars want to know, do glass lizards make good pets?
They're not very common in the pet trade. You can't have them legally as a pet in the state of Massachusetts. I don't know if that's true everywhere. There could be places where you could have them. They're not a very common pet. One thing to know about them is they're very long lived. They can easily live 50 to 60 years. So that's something you have to keep in mind when getting a reptile as a pet. With that being said, they're not known to be outwardly aggressive towards humans. If you approached one in the wild, it would just try to get away quickly. You would have to be careful though, since they can drop their tails. It would be best if you ever saw an animal like this to not go trying to grab it, because you wouldn't want it to drop its tail. It's not a fun experience for the lizard. It's just more if they're going to be eaten. But they're not outwardly aggressive towards people. They'd be shy and secretive and really just mostly want to get away.
All right, our last question for this animal is for Tommaso, age 8. It is his birthday today. Asked, do they swallow things whole?
Well, happy birthday. That's very fun that you get to see a cool animal show on your birthday. So they have different jaw structures from snakes. Snakes have to swallow their food whole because their teeth are not designed to chew, and they have a very special jaw construction that allows them to swallow things whole. Glass lizards tend to eat things smaller than their head, if that makes sense. They do have sort of a blunt version of teeth. They're not quite the same as fully formed mammal teeth, but they do have a version of teeth. They tend to eat worms, slugs, snails, typically things they can kind of gobble in at least a couple bites. But they don't have the same exact jaw construction as snakes do to completely swallow things really big whole. That was a good question, though.
All right, well, I'm going to put up some facts about this animal, the glass lizard. Hopefully this answers a lot of the questions I wasn't able to get to. So a little bit more about location, food, lifespan, and of course the cool facts about this animal. So again, feel free to write this down, take a picture, take a screenshot to learn more about our European glass lizard.
So I can give you guys another quick preview as Corey prepares our last animal. This one is going to be a bird. So by now, you guys probably know that Corey and I have maybe been trying to trick you guys a little bit with our animal imposters. So we're going to show you a bird, and I'm going to have you guys do the same thing. You can just type in the comments what you think it is. She looks as surprised to see you guys. All right, so once I get a few more comments, we'll turn it over and kind of see what people's guesses are. You guys are going to see this bird enjoy lots of snacks. I think she actually just ate a nice super worm. She also has baby mice that are already dead as treats that Corey will be giving her. All right, it looks like we have plenty of guesses, Sarah. So what are some of the most popular ones?
Oh, yes. So many have said owl. We have one for eagle and one for hawk, but pretty much everyone has said owl.
Okay. Again, I was expecting those guesses. We often get guesses like that for this bird. Every so often, there's someone that knows the exact identity of this bird, but it doesn't sound like it came up today. Now, this is a bird. It's actually kind of a trick because it might be a bird you've never heard of before. It is a bird called a tawny frogmouth, right? You guys knew exactly what that was, right? So it does kind of look like an owl. When you first look at it, you see those really big eyes. You see your big head, big beak. So you might think it's an owl right away. But once you look a little bit closer, you will see lots of differences between this bird and an owl. First of all, while the eyes are pretty large, they're not quite as forward facing as owl eyes. Owl eyes are just like our eyes. They are right in the front and forward facing. These are a little bit more to the side. Notice how you can only see one of her eyes right now. Next, let's talk about that beak. While the beak is impressive, they do get the name frogmouth because they have a really big frog-like beak. They're not quite the same type of beak as birds of prey. So owls, eagles, hawks, those birds are all birds of prey or raptors. They are birds that hunt other animals for their survival. Good clue that you have a raptor like an owl is a sharp, curved beak. So look at our tawny frogmouth's beak. It's cool, it's big, but it doesn't have that sharp curve. So it's not really that sharp. It's good at eating things like insects, but she's not going to rip up a huge, big animal all by herself with that beak. Another good indicator or clue that this is not a bird of prey are the feet of the bird. So raptors have really sharp talons, so very sharp claws, really, really sharp. Often the most dangerous part on the bird are those talons. Now, Corey's not even wearing a glove with this bird. their feet really aren't that strong. They mostly catch other animals that they eat, those little insects, just with that big frog mouth. So they don't really use their feet for that kind of thing. So you might be thinking, all right, you tricked us. It's not an owl, even though it kind of looks like one. All right, it's not a bird of prey. So what exactly is a tawny frogmouth? They belong to a group of birds that are called nightjars. So those are their closest relatives. Again, not birds of prey at all. We actually do have a nightjar that lives here in North America. It is called a whippoorwill. So maybe you guys can look that up on Google Images and see if maybe you've seen a bird like that before. Or you can look up that group nightjars and see some of the close relatives of tawny frogmouths. Their native habitat is in Australia. So that is where you will find the tawny frogmouths in the wild. And they are known for having excellent camouflage. They often sit in trees in plain sight during the day and really rely on their camouflage. In addition to just looking like tree bark, they do something called stumping, where they suck all their feathers in, makes themselves really skinny, and do their best imitation of a tree stump. And I will tell you, it is a pretty good imitation. Now, I only have a couple minutes left, so why don't I turn it over to some questions about our tawny frogmouth?
Yes, so Lila, age 9, wants to know where does it live? And Joanne asks, does it come from Australia?
Yes, they are native to Australia. So that is where you will find them in the wild. Although, like I said, there are some nightjars in other parts of the world as well. So you wouldn't find the tawny frogmouth here in North America, but you could find some relatives here. There's actually 3 different subspecies of tawny frogmouths too, and they're all in Australia.
All right, Vivian, age 9, wants to know what is the name, age, and gender?
So this is a female tawny frogmouth. Her name is Bindi, and she is about 2 years old. So that might seem pretty young, but it is actually considered mature and considered an adult. They're known to live well into their teens, even over 20 in captivity, is what I've heard.
All right, a lot of people are asking where it got its name from or how it got its name. I think the tawny frogmouth, not Bindi.
I guess they called them frogmouths because of that really big, impressive beak that they can open very, very wide. Oh, that was nice of her to just do it when I was talking about it. So I guess whoever first described them must have thought, wow, that mouth looks really like a frog mouth. So they just gave them that name. And then tawny just has to do with the coloration. It's just more describing like, I think the camouflage color. Because yeah, it is kind of a confusing name and one that's a little bit hard to remember.
All right, I think we are running out of time. So our very last question is a lot of people are asking if it can fly.
She actually can fly. She's pretty comfortable sitting with Corey right now, so she's not really trying. If she did try to fly away, mainly because we wouldn't want her to get hurt in this room that she's in, Corey is holding on to leather straps that are actually around her legs. They're called jesses. It's kind of like her version of a collar. So in case she did try to fly, we'd rather her just stay with us so that she wouldn't get hurt going around the room. But she is fully flighted, and she often does fly in her large enclosure in our live animal center.
All right, well, that is very cool. I am going to ask you guys to wave goodbye and everyone say bye to our animal for today.
Bye, guys.
All right, I'm going to put up some more information about our animal, more about the location. A lot of people are asking about the food and lifespan, so feel free to read that or take a screenshot. And I want to thank all of you today. I didn't get to a lot of questions. You all had some amazing observations and questions about these animals today. So if you enjoyed today's presentation, you can support the museum by visiting engage.mos.org/wondrous. welcome. And if you'd like to see all of our virtual offerings, which include these live shows, our podcasts, and other town halls, you can head to www.mos.org/mos@home. So thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend and happy Friday.